Okay, let me start. Good afternoon. I'll start recording. Share my screen. Okay, before I summarize what we briefly summarize what we discussed yesterday, let me just see this one. This presentation here has a lot more slides, okay, than I might actually this use in the class. So I wanted to mention a little bit. Maybe this particular slide is an extra slide that I had for model changing. I may not discuss that. You may kind of ignore that. Yeah, but I want to draw your attention to this. So I want to just briefly say a little bit about what the some of the slides that that I will not be spending a lot of time on. Briefly about that, and whether you want to say a little bit about them, and if you to some of them I might want you to review, read, and understand on your own. And if you had some question, you can either we can organize. In any case, I'm trying to. I'll be having uh, Shauryam to give it to have uh, a tutorial just to answer some of your doubts about this subject matter in FE Basics, and you can ask some questions. Now, this particular slide. So here, yeah, I started saying recall program semantics. You see, the whole logic that that we have seen, the inference rules that define what the whole triple corresponding to each statement, and then how to construct a whole triple for a program in terms of the whole triples of its component program can be considered as one way of specifying in a rigorous way the semantics, which means the meaning of uh, programs. Okay, but that's not the only way. Okay, so there are other ways of doing as well, and this I mean, usually the way that whole logic does is referred to as axiomatic semantics, because it starts with axioms for the primitive commands like assignment statements, skip, and so on, and then it has inference rules to construct the whole triple for a compound statement in terms of its component statement, like if then else, one that you saw, and sequential composition and so on. That's called the axiomatic semantics. Now, there are other ways of defining it as well. And one of them is called operational semantics. So this is kind of more like defining what happens, what it means to execute a program, defined, which is by a programming language, by actually uh, giving specifying an interpreter for it. Okay, so it has rules which says, if you start from some state, okay, this is like evaluation for a map. Sigma here is a map for mapping variables to values. What happens? What is the new state that you get, the new valuation that you get for each of these statements? It is very much like specifying an interpreter for a language. That's called operational semantics. And the reason that people have they have developed different ways of specifying these things is because you could then compare one against the other. And sometimes having it in an interpretive style helps you to do certain things that you may not be able to do. For example, this style of interpretive or the operational semantics is good for arguing about compiler correctness and so on. Whereas the whole logic that we are in the process of discussing is more relevant to construct proofs of correctness of program relative to some specification like pre and post. And it also helps when you have different views of this thing to establish the correctness of one way of doing, I mean, for example, Hoare logic by actually using the other style of semantics. I know one of you, I think it was Sayanthan, who asked this question: how do you know, if you, a relevant question that he asked was the way that I defined the inference rule for the assignment statement used in a backward way. How do you know that what it gives is the weakest precondition? One way you can argue informally, or a more rigorous way of proving, is you could actually then prove that it is indeed what it gives, the way it's that rule specified the predicate transformation indeed gives you the weakest precondition by actually proving it using that it is indeed the weakest precondition using some other style of semantics. And that's the purpose. And of course, I have not, there is a presentation which I usually cover for the software verification course, which I'm not going to do. And I just briefly wanted to mention that. Okay. And then I have some motivation slides, which you could go through, and I'm not going to cover them. And starting with some examples, please do review them in that. And if you have any questions, you can come ready with your questions to get answered in a tutorial that I will be requesting Shaurya to give. Okay. And that's also, so these examples, will be useful for you to review and understand the questions and the answers posed there. Okay, and then let's see. So there is some historical notes, as I said in here. So this Hoare logic and program semantics, that subject matter itself was, its origin can be traced back to late 60s and early 70s. And that's the period when a lot of these the foundational material for that form the basis for formal verification were developed. The 70s and 80s were very active in that kind of research. But now mostly the research in this area is in building tools to automate these logics and proving correctness, and then scaling them to practical systems, and then developing methodologies to apply them to new areas like deep learning, neural networks and deep learning, that we are that is the subject matter of this course. Okay, so that's about that. Now the other one, this I did not go through all the Hoare triples in here, so I suggest that you go through them. Then I want to let's see. So then I have some set of slides in here. Okay, so in order to understand these things, it is very important to this. What it means to the Hoare triples and what it means to do verification, etc. You, as I already pointed out, you have to be quite at ease to how to specify predicates, what predicates means, how they characterize sets of states, and how they are defined, and so on. So, and we also used existential quantification briefly, and if you want to understand, I'm not sure if I went through a lot of formulas that had existential quantification. So I'd encourage you to go through these slides where I have some examples of, examples of formulas involving quantification. Okay, and that I would certainly want you to. So those are things there. And in terms of, we want to understand existential quantification, there are let's see. So is there yeah, there are a couple of other things you may want to look at in the logic recap. Yeah, so here I have this. I didn't cover these. This is the slides that I used for recapping prepositional logic. Okay, early in the course, and here I define what is called quantified Boolean formulas, which are actually quantified formulas where the variables actually range over Booleans. Okay, and I'd encourage you to. There are lots of examples that I've discussed here, which you may want to like here, and I encourage you to go through them. That is one, and I will also that is one I suggest for you to, if you want to understand and exercise yourself in understanding tricky existentially quantified formulas. And there are also some examples in this slide presentation, which I sometimes use, but I'm not using here. So where there are like formulas, they're the equivalent of brain twisters. Okay, so you could review them if you want in a more difficult things. I will upload all these things to the Google Sheet, and that is that you may want to consider knowing it. Okay, so that and then okay, and then there are a few other slides. I will get to them later on. Okay, to summarize what we did, what we covered last time. Okay, what do we do? So we introduced the backward inference rule for the basic command, the assignment statement. Okay, which was defined in such a way that it derived, given a post condition, it derived the weakest precondition. Okay, and then we also saw how to another version of inference rule for an assignment statement which derived, given a precondition, the strongest post condition. We also, that is, as I told you, is expressed as an existentially quantified formula. And we also saw how, a version of the forward version, where you could, by introducing extra variables called ghost variables, one set to denote the initial values of the variables in the pre-state, and another timestamped variable like x1 here to hold the value of the variable that is being assigned by this assignment statement in the post. Okay, that way you could get rid of this existential quantification. Okay, so that we saw, and we also saw to proofs. And okay, and then we saw how to this one, the sequential composition, which is the basis for propagating these predicates either in a forward direction or backward direction across for a sequence of programs. So we saw the example of how to prove swap a code that swaps the contents of two variables first in the backward direction by using the backward, using the weakest precondition version of the assignment rule. Okay, and we also saw how we could do the same, using the forward inference rule, using the version that introduced new variables. And you saw that, that this meant, as you saw, it meant introducing lots of new variables, and saw, for every time a variable was, modified. And then, by the way, this particular slide in here is just a pictorial way of doing the this proof that I showed here. That's all. This is the backward proof for the swap. Okay, and that's all that thing does. And we also, so we saw the backward and the forward proof, and as we saw that this extra, if doing proofs like this, where you have where you are deriving a predicate in terms of you're keeping defining the formulas with at each point in terms of x has a lot of clutter, and in order to eliminate that clutter, we introduced this SSA notation. Okay, and that's what we did. So that allowed you to kind of we threw away after each assignment statement we were representing the formula that described the post predicate at that point was expressed in terms of the timestamp variables, and eventually the post was proved by just replacing the latest timestamp version of the variables for x and y. Okay, and then all you had to prove was to take the conjunction of all these intermediate assertions, and that you have to show that it implies the assertion, and that's what is sent to a prover like Z3. Okay, okay, and later on we saw the inference rule for how to derive the Hoare triple, the inference rule that specified how to derive the Hoare triple for a conditional statement. And this can be used both, this inference rule can be used for both in the backward and the forward direction, and in the forward direction with that describes how to put together the strongest post condition for each of the then and the else branch, assuming that you already derived the strongest post condition for Q and S. This one tells how exactly to construct the strongest post condition for the if then else statement as a whole. Okay, and the key point to observe is that it will then be you will put together it is expressed as two conditionals. I mean implications. One for the case where the Boolean condition of the if then else is true, and the other case where it is false. And what is important to note is that this Boolean is evaluated in the value of the variables in the pre-state. Okay, that's why x naught is substituted. Okay. Now, yeah, and we saw, and we also saw, I mean, it was towards the end of yesterday's lecture, so I'm just recapping this thing. So you could do a forward proof using this rule for, say, a conditional program, like I've shown here. So the backward one, I mean, we haven't seen the backward rule yet. Okay, the forward proof, once again, will be messy because of all the introduction of these new timestamp variables and the with the extra effort to keep equating them to the variable x. So in order to avoid that, then we saw that you could do that using the conditional version of the SSA, the single static assignment, where you would do the same thing. You would propagate using the timestamp versions. You would get the strongest post condition for the block that appears for the then arm of the if then else, and another for the else arm, and then you merge them using by introducing a new variable using a conditional expression, and that way you can propagate, because this style of proof becomes very messy in order to even implement or do it by hand. And using this SSA notation makes it easy. Okay. Now, I raise this question: how do you, if you want to do a in the backward direction? Okay, what would be the backward version? Okay, which will derive the weakest precondition for if then else, and I want to show you that briefly here. Okay, since I have it here, and yeah. So this is a version of the rule, the whole rule for the conditional statement, but expressed in such a way that how to put together, how to construct the weakest precondition for a if then else command in terms of the weakest precondition for the two blocks that appeared, command 1 and command 2, that appeared as the then and else arm. So what this is saying is, if you assume that you can derive the weakest precondition, I'm sorry that there is a mistake here. This should be Q and this is correct. Okay. So given if you are interested in construct the weakest precondition for this thing, for a post condition, given post condition Q, what you have to do is you now first you propagate that post condition Q through the through command 1. Okay, so that you will use the inference rule recursively. Okay, but first construct the weakest precondition with the post condition Q for the statement that appears as the then arm command 1. Similarly, you do the same thing for command 2, and then the weakest precondition for if then else as a whole is just the conditional implication. So which here I'm expressing in terms of the if then else ITE operator, which you must have already seen in Z3, which is exactly defined this way. So once you do this, now you could then use this thing for say proving the same program for which I showed the forward proof. The backward version of that program using the weakest precondition rule. So where here this is the post condition that I want to prove, and then I'm just computing in each step, computing the weakest precondition for the statement that appears in the else part, the weakest precondition using the post condition that appears, for the if statement that appears in the if part, and then I'm putting them together. Okay. In terms of using the ITE as specified in this formula. So I'll suggest that I will upload these examples also, and you please review them and go through them and make sure that you understand. As you can see, the backward proof is somewhat simpler in the sense there is less clutter in it, because it doesn't have to introduce these new timestamp variables. Okay, so but you could use do your proofs either in the backward style or in the forward style, as I observed last time, or by mixing and matching the two ways, the two styles of doing it. Okay. Any questions that you have before I move on to discuss how you verify programs, how you deal with loops, how you do a whole style of proofs using post condition and weakest precondition for loops. Any questions? Okay. Okay, so how do you handle loops? Okay, this is, yeah, I'll go a little slow, and please do ask any questions if you have doubts, or if you stop me if I'm going too fast for you. One way you could do, see, right now, the rules that I've shown you can be applied either in the forward direction, the backward direction, for programs that are straight line programs, okay? Even including branching programs. Okay, so one way to handle loops, of course, I mean, the obvious way is to just unwind the loops to construct straight line branching straight line programs and apply the existing routes. Okay. Now, of course, if you your program, if you have to unwind it completely, even if you're able to do, it will be too huge. And in some cases, you may not be able to unwind it all the way loops, because the number of iterations that you have to execute the loop for could be data dependent, could be dependent on the input data. And since we are doing it for all possible input data, you might not be able to do this. And even if you're able to do, if you know exactly precisely, like for for loops, etc., how you could unwind them, you may be able to unwind the whole thing, but still it won't be practical and it won't scale. So I'll be introducing the concept of what is called a loop invariant, or an inductive, or sometimes it's also called an inductive invariant, to that comes to the rescue. Okay, when I introduce the rule, the whole rule for this, you may think that there is a little bit of magic there, and to some extent there is a little bit of magic. Okay, and that also illustrates the complexity in handling this handling loop, and so let's first look at the inference rule for a loop, that specifies how to derive a whole triple for the command that denotes a loop, in this case the while command, in terms of the whole triple that you have for the body of the loop. So here Q is the body of the loop, B is the loop entry condition. So what this thing is saying is, if you could somehow magically come up with a predicate, here I've denoted that as P, and that predicate is what I'll be defining it as a loop invariant or an inductive invariant interchangeably. And if that P is a predicate such that it is preserved in the body, so it is preserved every time that you execute the body. So assuming, I mean, if you start with a state in which P holds, and also the loop entry condition holds, then after executing the body, if P continues to hold in the post state, that is what I mean when I said Q, the body, preserves this predicate, in the sense It is something, it is a predicate that what you as a verifier, and that's what whole logic says. If you somehow can come up with a P that is preserved when you enter the loop and execute the body once, okay? Then, so what does this mean? That every time you execute the body of the loop in a state in which P is satisfied and you enter the loops, B is satisfied, then P is preserved. So that means that no matter how many times you execute the loop, as long as the entry condition is true, you keep executing it. And therefore, and then, so you could now kind of lift this up for multiple iterations. In some sense, the loop invariant predicate P here captures the effect of executing the loop for arbitrary number of iterations. So what this says is if you're able to come up with this a triple for the body, then you could now say that if you start with P and for this entire program represented by the while command, when you exit when you exit the loop, and that will happen when not B, the loop entry condition is true, that is B is false, then you will continue. You can P will continue to hold. So this is one way of kind of skipping over the loop completely. Okay, of course that means that of course there is this the magic here is how do you come up with such a predicate P, okay, for a loop, okay, which is very much dependent on what the body of the loop, and that is the most challenging part of extending this thing to verify loops. Okay, I will show an example, but do you have any questions here? I'm sure you have doubts or you understand this. Or you hold your question. I mean, if you don't have any questions, hold it until I show you an example, and then you may have. Or do you have any questions? Does anybody have any questions? Okay, then I will show you this example. For example, so this particular inference rule now allows you, and that's what I'm going to show you in this example, to decompose decompose verification of a program with a loop into a program that contains a loop into 3 parts. Okay, and that's what I'm going to illustrate. Now, first to illustrate what does such a loop invariant mean. For example, consider the loop program here. Okay, a simple while. So I execute this loop as long as I is not equal to 10. And every time in the body of the loop, I'm incrementing x by 2, and I'm incrementing I. Okay. So I state even x, the predicate even x is a loop invariant. What does it mean? So you see, if I assume that x is even just before I enter the loop, okay, and if I is indeed not equal to 10, after executing the body once, x continues to be even, correct? Because I'm incrementing x by 2. Therefore, if it is even when you at the beginning of an iteration and the loop entry condition holds, so the body here, the statements in the body is such that even of x is preserved when you get out. Therefore, you could then jump to the conclusion that no matter how many times I execute this, x will continue to be even. So at some point, I will become 10. So see, if my aim is to prove when I get out of the loop that x must be even, then this allows me to prove it without actually unwinding the loop into a straight line program. So what do I do? Now I split it into three parts. I have to show that the first time I get to the entry, the loop entry point from the entry point of the program, that X is even. That, in this case, this is the pre-code, okay? So here you can use, that's a straight line code, happens to be a straight line code, so you could use the existing rules to do that. And in this case, that happens to be true, right? Because X is equal to 0 and it is even. That is the initiation check, okay? That you will have to show that this loop invariant predicate right now, I have somehow magically come up with that, okay? How you come up with that, let's defer for a moment, okay? So if you have this even, then if it is true that the first time I come here, it is even, that is one part. The other part is to show that indeed that loop invariant, that predicate is preserved every time I enter the loop and execute the body of the loop. And that is the inductive, that is called the checking the inductiveness, okay? The inductiveness means that no matter how many times you execute, once you enter the loop, that even X is preserved. So that now that's the other part of your verification. So assuming that you start in a state in which X is even and I is not equal to 10, because that's the loop entry condition, and then you execute the body. That's exactly the code that I have here, which consists of two statements, two assignment statements. Okay. Then you have to show that it is even of X. Okay. And then that is the inductiveness check, and that's exactly what was captured by this inference rules. It is just saying that P has to be inductive. Okay. And that is what it means. Okay. In the second thing. So now this once again can be proved. I mean, this is loop free, therefore you can use the existing rules to prove. Finally, you have to prove the other part is the exit check. Okay, that if you if even X is true at this point, at the point where you enter the loop, and then if the loop exit condition holds good, then you know that even of X, from that you'll have to prove whatever is the post condition. In this case, the post condition happens to be even of X, and therefore if even of X and I is, I'm sorry, this should be I is equal to 10, because that's the negation of the loop entry condition. Okay, therefore there's a mistake here. So even of X and I is equal to 10, then it is even of X, okay, which is trivial. So that is what. So it consists of, so that you see now here, this method will scale because you're not unwinding, and you're pretty much replacing the loop with this predicate, which I have defined as a loop invariant, or sometimes it's called an inductive invariant. So what is such a predicate? So but the burden now has been shifted to coming up with a predicate of that satisfies this. So as I said, in order to make this proof succeed, you have to find a loop invariant or inductive invariant that satisfies three conditions. One is that it has to be true at the first time you enter that. Yeah. Oh, by the way, that predicate is said to be inductive if it is preserved every time you enter the loop, and then you execute the loop once, and assuming that the loop entry condition. That's what means it's inductive. Why is it an invariant? See, invariant, in programming or verification parlance, in verification, or especially when it refers to invariant, is something that holds good for a program. An invariant is usually associated. Invariant is just a predicate that is associated with a particular location. In this case, for example, we have true here, even here, and we have even here. So it is said to be an invariant if it is true every time the program execution gets to that point. Okay, so therefore that's why, since we require that the li, in this case the predicate, be true the first time you get to that location from the entry point of the program. So that is and then it is true every time you after every iteration, execute after every iteration. That shows that it is not only inductive, that is, it is true every time you execute the body, and it is also true the first time you enter this. And therefore, from those two facts, you can be sure that that is an inductive invariant. Okay, because it's also an invariant because it is true every time control is at that location. Additionally, you will have to show that this exit check, and sometimes that is called that it is safe, that the inductive invariant is good enough, is and strong enough to prove my exit condition. Okay, so that is also, so the kind of loop invariant that you come up with and has to be such that when that loop invariant along with the negation of the loop entry condition holds good, that you should be able to, that should imply whatever the post condition is. Otherwise, such a predicate will not be adequate to be able to prove the post condition, which is the goal of verification, as we have specified the problem, correct? So, and when that predicate, the loop invariant predicate that you come up with also is adequate, or sometimes it's called safe, to prove the post property. It's that is when it exit check, then it is, we say that it is also safe. So although this seems that you are being able to reduce it to three conditions, checking conditions, which you could execute using existing rules. The burden, as I keep saying, is in coming up with such a loop invariant that is inductive, that satisfies, that is an invariant in the sense that it holds good first time you get there, as well as it is safe enough to prove your post condition. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, hello. I have a
Yes.
question.
Identify yourself, please.
Oh, I'm Shantan.
Shantan. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So in the initiation check, so we didn't check the I is equal to 0, right? Why didn't we do that?
Yeah, okay. So this part is only with respect to, as I was saying is this, okay, what I showed you, the initiation check is just what is needed to show that the predicate that I have proposed as a loop invariant is indeed true the first time you get there, okay? In order to actually, you are right, that in order to actually do the exit check, you will have to also propagate, get the strongest post condition for all the variables. You will also have to use the fact that I is 0, okay, at this at this point, okay. So now, yeah, but let me see. No, you don't need us, do you? Because we're not proving termination, okay. We have shown, say, actually I take it back, okay. The reason that you don't need to see, we're only proving here partial correctness, okay. If I ever, so what I proved is, it turns out that it's not necessary the value of I, while if my post condition was asserting something about I, okay, that for example when I exit the loop, that I also want to make sure that I is equal to 10, okay, or something like that. Since my post predicate does not care anything about what the value of I is at that point, okay, so it is not necessary, because you have shown that if it is even of x, and then if I ever get out of the loop, then it is even of x. Okay.
I see. I see. Okay.
Now, if suppose I had my post predicate is even of x and I is equal to 10 or something like that. Okay, that I is greater than equal to 10, whatever, some predicate and an assertion that involves I, then of course you will have to push in general, of course you will have to get the strongest post condition here, okay, and then have the entire fact about all the variables. Yeah. Okay, so that's what I was doing. So it's kind of illustrates the fact that maybe sometimes your what you propose as a loop invariant for a loop is non-trivial, and you'll see that is very much dependent on how do you come up with it. That's my the next slide will tell you. Okay. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yes. Yes. Interesting.
Okay. Okay. So let me. Yeah. So this slide is very important. Okay, because it tells a lot about not only about certain important observations or properties about what makes good loop invariance for a loop, and it also gives you intuition about how to propose or construct them. I'm using the same program here. Firstly, any predicate Li that is inductive in the sense that it is preserved after executing after every iteration, that the set of states that it characterizes necessarily includes every possible state that can actually occur at that when you are at that location over all iterations. Okay, so the important thing, notice, is I use the term includes. Okay, so certainly, so of course the program variables here are x and I, but my loop invariant is constraining only the x. Okay, so the predicate, what are the set of states that satisfy the predicate even of x? It doesn't constrain I in any way. Therefore, it allows for I to be anything there. Okay, so that's why loop invariant, the predicate I'm saying it's include. It may not, it doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to, in all cases, specify exactly, characterize the exact set of values, that exact set of states, precisely exact set of states. Okay, so you can get away with specifying, using a loop invariant that, as long as it includes all the possible states, then it should be okay. Therefore, and then I say it is closed in the sense that it is, you can't be adding any more. Okay, it kind of, if it includes all the states that you get after executing all the states that you get when you by executing the loop body arbitrary number of iterations over arbitrary number of iterations from any state in which that predicate holds good. Okay, so if it's even of x, as long as you keep executing this, you will continue to be in even of x, and that's what it means. It has to include all the states. Now, because of the way that it has been defined in such a general fashion, the same loop body, same loop constructed from the body can have multiple valid inductive invariants, loop invariants. Which do you choose among them very much depends on what is the property that you, what is the condition, the post condition that you want to verify. And that's why this core logic gives you, this loop invariant concept gives you that freedom. That is a boon as well as a bane, okay? It's a boon in the sense you can adjust the strength of the loop invariant according to your need about what you want to prove in the post condition, but not all. Okay, so I'll get to that. Okay, why? What are some of the candidate predicates that can serve as a loop invariant or an inductive invariant for this program, for this loop in this program? Okay, for example, we've already seen one, even of x. For example, I less than or equal to 10 is also true, correct? Is it? Okay, is there a mistake? I less than or equal to 2? It's a mistake. If I is okay, what does it mean? The inductiveness check, you have to do this check. If I is less than or if I start in a state where I is less than or equal to 2, less than or equal to 10, and if I is not equal to 10 is true, then after executing this, I will still be 10, correct? Say yes or no. Am I right or not? Because if I is less than or equal to 10 at this point, okay, where I have even of x, okay, that is the check that you will have to make to check if something is a loop invariant. You have to see if I start in a state in which that predicate is true, which in this case is I is less than or equal to 10, and I enter the loop, okay, and the loop entry condition is satisfied. If I is less than or equal to 10 and I is not equal to 10, then I has to be less than or equal to 9, correct? So then when I enter the loop, I increment I by 1. So at most I can be only 10, correct? Because if, yeah, so you see, the loop invariant is, you need to execute, it need to be true only when you execute the loop, assuming you enter the loop, okay, only under the condition that the loop entry condition is true. Therefore, I is less than or equal to 10 is a loop invariant as well, okay? So x is less than or equal to 20 is also a loop invariant. And even of x and this one is also a loop invariant, okay? Because all these things satisfy the two conditions, okay? They are, each of these is true when you get to this point, okay? Before you enter the, check the loop entry condition from the first time you get there, and after every time you execute the body of the loop, assuming the entry condition holds good. So that is the two checks, okay, that that you will have to apply in order to check if it's a loop invariant or an inductive invariant. All these things are inductive invariants. Now the strongest one is this one. This now, what I've shown you here, that x is equal to 2 times I, and I is less than or equal to 10, is the strongest because that characterizes the precise set of all states, that set of all values or the states, the values x and I can take when at this point, okay? Because as you know, I mean, x is always going to be 2 times I, because the number of times I is incremented, the number of times I and x are incremented are the same, and I is incremented by 1, whereas x is incremented by 2, and that's why this thing is the case. Now, as you can see, that this is weaker because even of x, because x is equal to 2 times I, it is always the case that it is even, and I is less than or equal to 10. Now this goes back to the question. So why you can, yeah, you're free to use any one of these invariant predicates to split your proof and do the exit check. And the reason that, and what which one will you use, it entirely depends on what you want to prove when you want to exit. Okay, so a loop invariant, the strength of the loop invariant, how strong you need to get, is determined partly by what you want to ensure, what the post condition is. And of course, this very much depends on the statements in your that make up the body of the loop. Okay, very much so. Okay, because that is the one that determines whether the inductiveness check, whether it is preserved every time you go around the loop, is every time you go around the loop, I mean, every time you execute, the body is determined. And of course, it is dependent on the entry condition, the loop condition as well. Let me ask you a kind of a trivia question. What is the weakest inductive invariant for this loop? Anybody fathom to guess?
X greater than 0.
X is, what you said, X is greater than or equal to 0?
Greater than equals to 0, yes.
Well, that is certainly, it is an inductive invariant, correct? Okay. Assuming there's no overflow, etc. I mean, even when assuming there's no overflow, okay. Let's assume that these are infinite precision numbers. But is that the weakest? Okay, that's actually not the weakest. It is certainly weaker than some of these, invariants here. Although it doesn't say anything about I. For example, true, the predicate true. By the way, who said that? Who proposed that? X is
Yeah,
greater than equal to
Arpan.
0. Arpan, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. I encourage other people to also please speak up, okay? And then don't be afraid to ask even silly questions, okay? And I'm sure these are a bit hard, not easy concepts to digest, but once you get the hang of it, okay, once you see examples, that's why it's so crucial that I keep insisting that I will be giving you an assignment. We will be working. I'll be forcing you to do some examples. It's important that you understand these things. Now, X is greater than or equal to 0 is not the weakest. Okay, there is even weaker than that one. Okay, so true, which is always can be used as a loop invariant. Okay, because true includes every possible state, right? Because every state satisfies this predicate true, okay, like I mentioned. So if you start from any state in your universe, and of course, after you execute, no matter what the body is, you will end up in some state in your universe, okay? So this is somewhat of a, trivia question. So true is the weakest invariant, because if you start in a state which can include any state, then you execute. Obviously, every state is included in that predicate that you started with. Now, the problem with using true is that it is too weak. Okay, if you start with any state, then you may not be able to prove anything that is interesting that you want to establish as your post predicate. And therefore, true is, while it is an inductive invariant, it's a nice question as a trivia question, it is a useless loop invariant. Okay. Now, in this case, it turned out that whatever is the post predicate happened to be also be a loop invariant. Therefore, it we lucked out, and therefore whenever the post predicate itself serves as a loop invariant, then you can actually use that and then check. But it is not going to be the case. Okay, and that's what I had weakest. Okay, any questions from other people? Okay, so I would yeah, if indeed you are kind of finding it hard to understand this, see, like I said, that's why it's very important that you have to get used and accustomed to reading these formulas as predicates, and understanding that the predicate can also be used as a set of states where every state in that set satisfies the predicate that makes the predicate goes to true, going back and forth, and this is important. That's why I strongly encourage you to go through that 2 slides where I have just given you several examples of using predicates which are defined by some formula as characterizing set of states. Okay. Any questions here? Okay, now. Okay, so there is another question. So this gives the other part. Okay, what inductive invariant that you what do you choose among these things? I mean, that is the real challenge, you see, because there are so many different things that are candidates that can serve as a candidate for your invariant. Once you propose something, checking if it is a invariant is fairly easy. Okay, because the checking the inductiveness check and the initiation check, they are easy. Okay, because they just involve doing the kind of proofs that I have already showed you, either using a backward propagation or forward propagation. What is going to be hard is to coming up with something, and also coming up with something that is safe and adequate to prove your posting. So that is the question that I'm addressing here, giving you a little bit of intuition. What inductive invariant is adequate to use? Okay, that depends on your post condition. Suppose what I want to prove upon exiting this loop is I want to establish that I is equal to 10. What would be adequate loop invariant? For example, even if X will not do, does it? I mean, I already pointed that thing out when I answered Sayantan's question. Because if I use even X, it doesn't say anything about I, okay? So if I want to prove that when I exit the loop, this condition I will always be 10, which is true for this program, correct? Since I'm starting with I is equal to 0 and I'm counting up, when I exit the loop, I is equal to 10. But this is not good enough for me to prove, because if I assume even if X is true is at this point, and assume the negation of this. I'm sorry. I take it back. Okay. So since what I have to show is actually this is true. This also serves as this is adequate. If my post condition is I is equal to 10, even a weaker thing. Okay. I don't need any strong. Okay. That's the point that I was making. Okay. Even if X is also adequate, but true, which I a moment ago said is almost a useless predicate as an inductive invariant, is good enough in this case. Because why is it case? Because you see, the post condition is implied by the exit condition. You know that the only way you will get to this point, at the exit, the location at the exit of the loop at this point here, where my cursor is if when the loop exit condition is false. Now, the loop exit condition being false automatically guarantees that I is equal to 10. Therefore, when your post condition is just as simple as the negation of your exit condition, it is the most trivial case. Then you don't need to the weakest thing is good enough. Okay. Now, if the post condition is even x, of course, even if x is, like we said, is one adequate thing. Okay. If I want to show that my post is x is equal to 20, then you see that even if x is no longer strong enough, okay, it is too weak. Because if I assume even if x, and if I only assume even if x is true is at this point, and then if I is greater than, if I is equal to 10, I can say nothing about x is equal to 20. Now, so then I'll have to propose, I have to use a stronger predicate that indeed x is equal to 2 times I. Okay, and if I use that, then of course I know that x will be equal to 10 upon exit, because the fact that x is equal to 2 times I every time here at this point, and the loop exit condition, which will imply this condition. So that's what makes this discovering the right kind of inductive invariant to use to discharge the three obligations: the in the exit, the inductive, and the initiation condition to be true is makes it hard. Okay, so yeah, another thing that I want to make sure is, just because, like I've said, just because with a loop invariant that you have proposed, that may be inductive, that may satisfy two of the conditions, where the two conditions that defines it to the requirement for it to be a loop invariant, which is the initiation condition and the inductiveness check. Okay, but if the third condition, if that is not adequate or safe to prove your post condition, that doesn't mean that your program is not correct. Okay, because it is giving me this freedom, it can also mean the program might be correct, but what you have proposed as the predicate that you have proposed, the loop invariant that you have that you're using as a loop invariant, may not be strong enough for the post predicate. Therefore, a violation of the exit check for a particular predicate that you propose doesn't necessarily mean that your program is incorrect. There is a bug in your program. Okay, that is the most important thing to note. What it means is that what you have is not a good enough, strong enough loop invariant. So you will have to strengthen it by constraining it a little bit, more. And therein lies the challenge of coming up with this loop invariant. Okay, but then once you come up with one, then you can decompose, as I've told you, you can completely throw away the loop. So in that sense, an inductive loop invariant that you have proposed can be viewed as I said, it can be used to replace actually the loop. It is sometimes, I call it, this is the first time I'm going to be introducing this concept of abstraction, and we will get to this, but obviously I'm taking more time, and I'm, so I don't think I'll be able to, I'll need one more class for going through, covering all the things that I want to cover as part of FV Basics, which includes abstraction. But this is the first time that I'm introducing that. So an inductive loop invariant is considered can be considered as an abstraction of the loop. Okay, in the following sense, because it includes, like I've already said, that it includes all the states, all possible states or the values that the variables can take at the entry point to the loop over all iterations. Okay, and therefore, but then it is, unless, yeah, but unless it is the strongest loop invariant, they may include not only the permissible values, the legal values that you can get, but also unreachable other values. Now, for example, as that I told you about even x, right? It doesn't say anything about what value I should take. I should have. It can be anything, and for that matter, it doesn't say anything about the upper and lower bound about x. Therefore, that is why it is okay. It is an abstraction. Whenever we use the term abstraction, this is in general, not necessarily in verification. Abstraction of some model. It is usually used. This concept is relevant for a model. When you construct a model for an artifact, it has to be an abstraction, in the sense it throws away certain details and keeps certain details, because that is the purpose of a model. A model, model with that is useful has to be. It's said to be an abstraction because it throws away some of the details, but it keeps some relevant details. There's another importance in that sense, because it is characterizing the set of all states. In some sense, it is without actually looking at the body, it is an abstraction. It also satisfies another thing. It's an abstraction, and which is usually called an over approximation. That's another term that you should take note of. It is an over approximation because it over approximates that, in general, it over approximates the set of all states that the program variables can possibly take at the entry point here for all iterations. Okay, it must include all the values that it can certainly take, but it can also throw in other values that are not legally possible. So in that sense, it is a superset of the actual values that are possible at that point. That's why such an in that sense, such an abstraction is called an over approximation, because it over approximates the thing. Of course, the strongest predicate, loop invariant, will capture precisely, this is not the strongest, by the way, this is the strongest. Okay. So now this captures precisely the set of values the set of all values that x and I can take during any iteration, okay, of the loop when you're at this entry point, the loop. Okay. So this will include those states which will in which you have not, there are more iterations to be executed. It includes states that that you are before executing any zero iteration, as well as states where you will not be executing any more iteration. That is, you will be exiting. Okay, in that sense, this is the precise. This is the precise. The strongest predicate will capture exactly the set of precisely the set of states. Okay. Yeah. So I think I will. Do I have anything else in here? This is the thing. So I will end by making a few observations. So now, okay, now maybe I will not introduce a new set of slides. Just a couple of minutes, that's all I just want. Now the question that I want to raise is, in this case, I showed you, if you were manually were able to come up with a loop invariant, how you could get rid of the loop and then decomposing the proof into checking 3 different segments. Okay, one pertaining to the body, one with respect to the code that occurs prior to the loop, one that occurs after the loop till your exit point. Okay, so your proof can be loop on a piece of code which is loop free. Now the question is, can you come up with this? How can you come up with this an inductive invariant that is adequate to prove a particular post condition automatically? Okay, now this problem of automatic synthesis of a loop invariant is undecidable. Okay, and that's why you also the program verification with loops is undecidable in general. Okay, there are cases where it is decidable. Okay, now program verification of straight line programs, the one even without loops, can also be undecidable. There, the undecidability is not due to these are, although these are important for you to understand. Okay, although it may not be that relevant for you in terms of the work that you will be doing here, but as a theoretical concept, it is important to understand. That's why I ask you keep for have your attention for another few minutes, a couple of minutes. Even for straight line programs, which is where you don't have the burden of inventing this magical loop invariants, it could be undecidable. But the undecidability there is not due to the fact that you have to come up with loop invariant, which is a hard problem. The undecidability could be because of what do you allow in your the logic that you're using to define the formulas that define your predicates. Okay, if you use full first order logic, because first order logic in general is undecidable. But if you can restrict, suppose you restrict yourself to propositional logic, then verifying straight line programs is decidable. Okay, or if you restrict yourself to things that are decidable, that can, for any decidable fragment of your first order predicate logics, doing verification for straight line programs is decidable. Okay, but this addition, whenever you have your domains, that is the data types used in your program, if they range over integers and infinite sets, or even non-infinite sets that are more complicated, then the problem can become undecidable. Now, having loops throw in an additional level of complexity. Okay, so the real challenge in automating, the challenge of program verification is how you deal with loops. Of course, there are other challenges, like how do you do distributed program verification? How do you do concurrent programs? How do you scale deep neural networks, convolutional networks, etc.? Some of that, as it relates to neural network, is what we will be seeing. Okay, we will be looking at in the papers that we study moving forward. However, the question that I'm raising briefly, and which I will elaborate in my next class, is: are there methods that can completely automate this? Okay, and for cases where they are decidable. One is yes. Okay, so if you restrict yourself, you put certain restrictions, you can. Okay, suppose you restrict yourself so that all your domains are discrete and finite. Okay, then for certain class of properties like propositional which is called propositional temporal logic, then coming up with this automatically deriving these the strongest invariant is decidable. Okay, and there are algorithms to do it, and there are tools to do it. That is the subject of model checking. Okay, there is this other course that I teach, which is software model checking, and it is entirely devoted to how you could derive the strongest invariant. Okay, what are the methods that you can do to derive the strongest invariant? So model checking can, in simple term, can be considered how do you automate this synthesis of inductive invariants for finite abstractions that are all finite tree. There is an other now, if you're doing it using whole logic or first order predicate calculus, it is undecidable. Okay, and even this problem of deriving inductive invariant is very hard. There is another branch of program analysis called abstract interpretation, which restricts the kind of property. Now that allows your domain to be infinite, okay? But it severely restricts the shape of your property, the kind of property. It doesn't allow arbitrary predicates like whole logic allows. If you restrict yourself, severely restrict to certain kinds of shapes in which you could for your predicates, then you can do it not only automatically but very efficiently, okay, without actually using SAT solvers like Z3. Now that is called static analysis or abstract interpretation. Now that is important for you to understand, because abstract interpretation has been the tools that work very widely and very nicely, very well, and scale, not only for program but also for neural networks, are built using the principles of abstract interpretation. Okay, and that is what I will cover. That uses abstractions in a very ubiquitous fashion. And that is the one that I will cover. I will not be covering model checking at all. I'll be covering abstract interpretation and covering, before that, introducing this concept, illustrating concept of abstraction and so on, that are important for you to understand these tools and methods for deep learning verification. So I will end there. And I know I have gone way beyond my thing, and I appreciate your patience, for sticking up with the thing. And yeah, I mean, it's already late, I know, but still, if you have any questions, I will more than happy to take it. Any questions? Okay, so as I keep saying, I mean, paper assignments are done. I will send a document. I'll circulate a document between now and next class, and we'll have some discussion about the preliminary assignments of paper next time in the next class as well. Okay, I'll see you. Oh, Shaurya, are you there? Shaurya is not here. I don't know what the final thing is. See, certainly from next week, okay, we will shift back to the thing, but certainly on Monday, we will move back to Monday. Now, there was a proposal to move Friday class permanently to Wednesday, okay, at 3:30. Now, I don't know what you guys agreed amongst yourself. I will get a confirmation from Shauryam, and then I'll announce the classes, regular class time slots for starting next week. Okay? Yeah, that I want to know. Okay. Thank